The teachings of General Conference are the considerations the Lord would have before us now and in the months ahead.
Our marching orders for each 6 months are found in the General Conference addresses.
For the next 6 months, your conference edition of the Ensign should stand next to your standard works and be referred to frequently.
I encourage you to read the talks once again and to ponder the messages contained therein.
I exhort you to study the messages of this conference frequently, even repeatedly, during the next 6 months.
You're listening to the Conference Talk podcast, where it's conference weekend every weekend. Each weekend, we discuss talks from the most recent General Conference of The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We'll share some insights, make some connections, and have a bit of fun as we study the words of the awesome men and women that God has called to direct His church in the latter days. I'm Rachel Holt. Today, we're lucky to be joined by my husband, Kevin Holt. Kevin, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm Rachel's husband. I have been a member for my entire life. Lived in California, Arizona, Illinois, mostly in Utah, though. My mission was in Arizona.
Very awesome. We've been married for just over 10 years. Kevin took on a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old right away in our marriage. And so today's talk is really appropriate for us because it's the importance of a family-centered gospel of Jesus Christ. Kevin, what was your impression of President Oaks' talk?
I felt like it was very appropriate. It's a reinforcement of the importance and centrality of the family of proclamation to the world. And it continues the idea that family and exaltation are kind of inseparably connected, that's the overall goal of the gospel.
Exactly. And the family proclamation was announced 30 years ago. Gordon B. Hinckley, in a women's session of conference, read it out. I remember that. And I remember thinking back then, why the heck do we need this? I mean, this is an obvious doctrine of the gospel. I never really understood why we would need it. And now here I am 30 years later, a mom and a wife, and living in a world that this is a major discussion. And quite often there's been a lot of debate over whether this is doctrine or not. Elder Rasband put an end to that by saying, this is doctrine. It's not changing. It's not going away. And I found that really interesting. And then Elder Oaks came in and hammered it home further with this talk.
Importantly, it's something that will never not be doctrine. You can pretty reliably hang your hat on it because the whole point of the gospel is for families to be together. It's for us to be married in the celestial kingdom and to be with God and His family.
Exactly. And I've always said, and I've said multiple times on the podcast before, that when I think of God, yes, He's an omnipotent, all-powerful being who created all of us and is the architect of the world. But I think of Him more as a father, and I try to see the gospel from the perspective of how a father handles things. And it makes everything make a lot of sense because it's what a perfect father would do. President Oaks said that the proclamation to the family declares that God's commandment for His children to multiply and replenish the earth remains in force, and that we further declare that God has commanded that the sacred powers of procreation are to be employed only between man and woman, lawfully wedded as husband and wife. He quotes President Nelson at Brigham Young University saying the family is pivotal to God's plan. In fact, a purpose of the plan is to exalt the family. So, Kevin, when we got married, you definitely selected hard mode. What's it been like for you coming into a family and getting established?
There's definitely some difficulties. Luckily, we've got some fantastic kids, but the critical point is that you put in your heart and your love and you work really, really hard at what's a problem.
And you never give up. And I think that that's one of the big things. One of the things that President Oaks discusses is exaltation as a family affair. That's something President Nelson taught us. And that the saving ordinances of the gospel of Jesus Christ are the only thing that can exalt us. And that it seals us together in temples. I'm really grateful for temples. one of the things as, the mom of a family is that when we got sealed in the temple, you also became connected to the children. The gospel's so awesome is how we are linked together through the generations to always have this priesthood line connection. Marriage is not as celebrated. People are getting married older and older, and they're having fewer children, if having children at all. And I think that being a Latter-day Saint, it's really important that we obey the first commandment of God to Adam and Eve, to our forefathers, of multiply and replenish the earth as much as humanly possible. I love how President Oaks talked about parental influence being diluted even in the church right now because of the technology and the infrastructure of the country. Kevin, what are some ways that you see that we can step away from the world and be more involved as families in the raising of our children?
Well, I really loved the points that he highlighted about things like spending time together, going camping, doing trips, the kinds of things that I did a lot growing up that really brought my family close together. We always were going and doing something together, and it's kept us very close even to today.
Yeah, we had dinner with Kevin's family this last week, and it was just really nice to get together. The restaurant wasn't all that much. Usually one of us would cook, but everybody's been sick recently. And so instead of putting us through the cooking and the cleaning, we went out to eat. It was really nice to see our family and to just spend time with them. Kevin, tell them about your annual camping trips and what that's meant for your family.
Yeah, ever since my grandpa and his dad were young adult, they started going on these trips with the Utah County Search and Rescue and Utah County Jeep Patrol down to the Canyonlands area. And he's been doing that every year since then. And over 50 years, as soon as his sons-in-laws were capable, they started going along with. And importantly, as soon as their kids were old enough, they started bringing their kids along with. I think a lot of people there saw it as an opportunity to get away from their family for a weekend. And our family's always seen it as an opportunity to get together. And thanks in some part to our family, it's now up to younger kids. It's opened up to wives because we've really just wanted to be together.
That's something that I've always noticed about your family. It's always been together. When I married into the family, because Kevin didn't just marry into with my kids, I gained his family too. My family, personally, I'm an only child. I have half siblings and step siblings, but we were never raised together. We don't really have a relationship, especially now that my father's passed away. Blood relation, I have myself and I have my children and my mom, and that's it. And so I married into Kevin's family, and I had been through some really traumatic stuff around the time that Kevin and I got together. And I remember one of the best days was Kevin's grandfather, who's 92 years old and is still kicking. He's a heck of a man. But 10 years ago, Grandpa put his arm around me and he said, you never have to be alone again. I never thought it meant that I'd never be alone again, but that's a joke. Totally kidding. But Grandpa means a lot. And Grandpa's relationship with his daughters and with his sons-in-law, and then their relationship with the children. Kevin, you were basically raised with your cousins as siblings in a lot of ways.
Yeah, very close. We did all kinds of stuff together. We were always spending time together. And it was always really nice having the support, having the community, having people who can help you out. I've never had to worry about being alone, like you said, about not having that support structure. And now that my grandpa's getting older, my mom takes care of him, and it's reciprocal. It's just how you take care of each other.
For sure. And, when anyone in our family goes through something rough, it's always, what can we do to help? Whether it's Kevin's cousin making meals for Grandpa, or when Kevin's sister-in-law, When she got really sick, everybody pitched in to help a little bit there. When we have to move, we always have a moving crew, and it's a huge blessing. And that extends to the church as well. As members of the church, we're all in a giant family. I know that if I ever am traveling and I need something, I can reach out and find a priesthood leader nearby. Kevin and I teach Sunday school, and we have some youth that they just need somewhere to go that's not at home. And one of the young men comes over and does woodwork with Kevin, and it lights Kevin's face up, and it's a great thing for both Kevin and Ben, and we love him like he's one of our own. And so that's, we don't just call each other brother and sister as lip service. We're all an extended family as well. That's one of the things that taking on the name of Jesus Christ in baptism does, is we are family.
And that same kind of social support network is really important when you're talking about non-traditional families. It's great for a family that is making ends meet and has plenty of time for each other and has, the role models that they need. But it also kind of helps to fill in the gaps when you're missing some of those. Early in our marriage, we saw the benefit of church services helping us when we were struggling. And so many families can turn to the church to get some of that. In his talk, he's explaining how his family struggled growing up. And having a community around you, a close family, is critically important to making those unfortunate situations, those non-typical situations, easier to bear and more of a success.
President Oaks tells the story about his father dying when he was 7. My father's father died when he was 7, and I didn't realize that they were at the same age. It gave me some perspective on what President Oaks went through. He tells that I did research after, and I found out his father died of tuberculosis. His father was a doctor. And President Oaks, his father was in a hospital keeping him away. He likely contracted it while he was treating someone else with it. So, this is a man who literally gave his life in the service of his fellow men. And President Oaks talks about how he was at his grandparents' house, and his grandfather told the kids, President Oaks and his 2 siblings, that their father had died. And President Oaks ran into his room, and his grandfather followed him and went to his knees beside him and said, "I will be your father." And it's that link, that family link, that gets us through these hard times, whether it's a blood member family like Kevin and his family, or Kevin's grandpa to me, a person who married into the family, or even someone from the ward who steps in to help. It's a big deal. When I was growing up, my young women's leaders and my seminary leader took an active interest in me. Sister Sorensen would bring me over to her house and teach me things that I wasn't being taught at home. And to this day, she is a major reason I am the woman that I am. President Oaks says parents, single or married, and others like grandparents who fill that role for children are master teachers. Their most effective teaching is by example. The family circle is the ideal place to demonstrate and learn eternal values such as the importance of marriage and children, the purpose of life, and the true source of joy. It is also the best place to learn other essential lessons of life such as kindness, forgiveness, self-control, and the value of education and honest work. I have a story. So Kevin and I met playing Dungeons and Dragons. We're both big nerds, and we were playing with mutual friends, and that's how we met. And a couple months in, my sons wanted to come play D&D with me, and so they came and they were there. And I sat at the table, or my oldest son sat to the left of me. I sat at the table, then my youngest son, then Kevin. And Kevin started explaining to my younger son, who's very similar to Kevin in their interest in science, the science of being colorblind. Kevin talked to my son Sean and drew him pictures of the cones and the rods and all of the spectrum of color blindness. And at the end, we walked out and we were going back to our car. My son's 12 years old and he looks at me and he goes, Mom, Kevin's my best friend. And that bond never really ended. Sean's on his mission right now in Missouri, St. Louis. And that relationship between Kevin and Sean and that ability to share complex topics is something they still do. Sean, when he talks to me about, he needs socks and shoes. He needs this. He's having this experience. Talks to me about some emotional stuff. It's a little bit hard sometimes being on a mission. But then when I hear him talking to Kevin, they're having these deep doctrinal conversations. Kevin, what has it been like having a son on a mission? And how has being a father been an impact on you?
It's been a really powerful experience. Having him out and serving has been a blessing for us, certainly, and it's been even more of a blessing to see him grow and to see him get curious about the gospel like I've been curious about the gospel. Being able to talk to him once a week is a dramatic change from when I was on my mission, but I was skeptical at first. I think it's a change for the better, though, considering just how much influence he's been able to have on the people that he talks with.
Absolutely. One of my favorite parts of Sean's mission has been the fact that I've been able to be involved with the people that he is teaching. Through social media, they've reached out to me. We've become close, and I've been able to fellowship them after their baptism and sometimes before through social media. And it's been a way to be involved. It's been really, really cool. It's another testament of prophecy, knowing when the right time to make changes are. So then President Oaks talks about parents should educate children in the basic skills of living, including working in the yard and home. Learning languages is a useful preparation for missionary service and modern life. The teachers of these subjects can be parents or grandparents or members of the extended family. Families flourish when they learn as a group and counsel together on all matter of concern to the family and its members. One of the things I admire so much about your family is your mother's involvement with the grandkids. How much she works on learning with our nephew and niece, Brentley and Aurora, who are brilliant young kids, especially Brentley. Brentley is just the smartest thing I've ever seen. He's so smart. And it's largely because of how much your mom worked with him when he was a toddler on reading. It was always amazing to me. They were always doing something.
She instilled a love of reading in me and my brother. We had some struggles with attention. We always have. We've got pretty extreme ADD. So she would take us places, cool places to go just to sit and read. We'd do a little fort under the tree or go to a park or on a mountain hike. And then we'd just sit down and we'd read for an hour. And that got me excited about it.
Yeah, and she's done the same with Brentley. It's really made a huge difference, and you can see it in him. He's turning 11 this year in 2026. So we've got a year, but he's turning 11 and he's really blossoming. And of course, your brother and Christina have done an amazing job too. But it really is just impressive, and it's wonderful to see family do that. Oh, right. One of the things that President Oaks, this was the memeable, the quotable moment in the talk was, but some may say, but we have no time for any of that. To find time to do what is truly worthwhile, many parents will find that they can turn their families on if they all turn their technologies off. And parents, remember what those children really want for dinner is time with you. I really loved that statement. I'm right now in a journey. Kevin and I both work in technology. We're software architect and engineer and do consulting work. I know that even at 44, I have an issue with technology. I'm on it too much. I've had to teach myself, no, it'll be there later. You can come back. You don't have to finish streaming that video. Kevin and I were talking the other day about YouTube being a problem.
Yeah, anything that promises you like infinite entertainment, all of the apps that you can just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling through. lost kind of an interesting skill, which is being bored. There's the paradox of boredom that I've talked to you about before, that not doing anything energizes you to want to do something meaningful, to want to do something useful. Being able to sit bored for a couple of minutes gives you time to reflect and to think, gives you time to come up with new ideas. And when you have an app that's always feeding you interest, always feeding you information, it takes away from that. I always love the story from Gordon B. Hinckley about his dad, that his dad would frequently go out and in the evenings just sit on the wall for hours thinking. And he talks about how his dad was a great writer and a great thinker. And a lot of that's attributable to just taking time to reflect and not have something right in front of your face. We've lost something even more important in the motivation to do something even better.
Exactly. And we're seeing that in our kids, and it's scary. I know that my oldest son, our oldest son, he had some struggles with reading and learning. And I always noticed that when we were having family scripture study, his reading was better. And when we weren't doing family scripture study, he would struggle reading again. President Oaks brings out that great blessings come to families if they pray together, kneeling at night and morning to offer thanks for blessings and to pray over common concerns. Families are also blessed as they worship together in church services and in other devotional settings. Family bonds are also strengthened by family stories, creating family traditions, and sharing sacred experiences.
The great thing about the promise of the gospel is that doing the gospel things are the key to bringing you happiness and a better life. And you can put that to the test. But very easily in my life, the times that I'm more closely following the gospel are the times that I feel the most at peace, the most happy, the most successful, productive. And the times that I'm not following the gospel is the times that I don't feel as happy with myself. And it's not because I'm looking at all of the gospel things that I'm doing. It's because the principles of the gospel are designed around bringing us happiness and success and help.
I always love the duty you feel to your family. You feel a responsibility to be an example to your family and to be who you are. That's one of the things that attracted to me to you was your devotion to family in the gospel, the specific gospel element of your devotion. I love that. For our kids rely on us to be that too. I love that Sean, just before he left on his mission, he gave each of us a priesthood blessing, which is if you have children who have the priesthood and you have not received a priesthood blessing from your son, do that. It is awesome. In his blessing, they were both kind of a come to Jesus moment for both of us, but it had an impact on how I've lived my life the past year and a half. It's awesome to see your kids grow up. It's scary. And being in the church with this is so important. Kevin, what's your impression so far of President Oaks and what's going to be coming from him?
I've always liked him as a leader. He talks and lectures in a way that I really understand and connect with. So I'm excited to see how things are going forward.
It was interesting that we didn't have any temples, that we're just going to catch up on them.
Yeah, I think we would have had a pause on the temples either way, but it was...
Oh, for sure.
It was really fantastic for the last couple of years to see all of the temples announced. It's an acceleration like we haven't seen before.
Well, and it's fulfillment of prophecy. You know, they're dotting the earth. It's really exciting. We have President Eyring as the first counselor. I loved his comment in the announcement when they announced it. He goes, I thought I was done. Not like he's upset about being being a counselor. It's just, I'm sure it's a lot of responsibility.
Yes, it is.
So D. Todd Christofferson is the second counselor. In the announcement, he was like, so I didn't expect this when I woke up this morning. It was really funny. He's also an attorney. Every prophet, when they get called, they have a specialty. David O. McKay, every member a missionary. President Nelson, being a peacemaker. And a lot of the talk when President Oaks was called was the fact that President Oaks is a religious freedoms expert. And so is President Christopherson. Really great presidency. Also, since President Oaks was called and President Holland was called as the official president of the Quorum of the 12. He's no longer the acting president of the Quorum of the 12. He has seen a resurgence in health, it seems. Like he's been jetting all over the place, dedicating temples, and he gave a wonderful, I encourage everybody to go and listen to his President Holland's YouTube channel is where to go if you want to hear a spiritual message. He posts like little scripture stories quite often. And he recently did one on how to know when I've been forgiven. How do I know when I'm forgiven by God? 4 days ago, and this is October 26th, is when we're recording this. And so President Holland posts some amazing videos on YouTube. In case you don't know, all of the apostles now have a YouTube presence. So President Holland is doing better, which we all like to see. We should cherish every day we have that man on this earth because he is a treasure and is one of the greatest men that we've ever seen. Thanks for listening to the Conference Talk podcast. This episode, we discussed President Oaks' address, Family-Centered Gospel of Jesus Christ. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a 5-star rating anywhere you get podcasts, and check out our website, conferencetalk.org, where you can follow us on social media, drop a comment, check out the show notes, and learn more about us, your hosts. If you want to follow me, Rachel, you can find me on X as Rach the Riveter, and Kevin isn't on social media, so you can just come talk to me and I'll deliver the message. And while we always appreciate new followers, it's better to follow the prophet and the apostles themselves. We love speaking about the church and our leaders, but we do not speak for them. Everything said on this podcast represents our own personal opinions. So join us next time in making every weekend Conference Weekend on the Conference Talk podcast.